Let's see if we have any sound also. Hi there.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Hi there, all of you. Nice to be here. I was almost saying Tallinn, but that's not the place. I'm here to talk about, nowadays I work for a company called Skewed Production, which is my own, but the main topic of today is actually what I did within IKEA. I ended my life at IKEA for the second time in my life in October, and we did a lot. And starting off this, I would like to show you some of the things that we did during those 6 years. And let's hope that it begins. Okay, sorry for that. Could we do the movie, please? I would appreciate that. Is it working out for you guys? So and so. But let's skip it then. Now. Yes. Okay, so that was actually from out of more than 50 collections that we did during my 6.5 years there. And the collection at IKEA is about 20 to 30 products. On top of that, we did 12,000 news. 2,000 news every year, to be honest. So how do you go about that? To give you kind of a background to this, maybe you need to have a background to IKEA, because there is no such thing as IKEA here in Estonia, yet. This place, this very small place, is the origin. And I think this is part of the story as well. This is a place of 10,000 inhabitants, in the middle of nowhere, in the woods, in the southern parts of Sweden. This is the origin of IKEA. And this is still the headquarters of IKEA, where I used to work. In this place, we create all of the items that's going to be sold around the world. Right now, you see this crazy figure here, almost 4 billion. That is the amount of products that is produced and sold by IKEA every year. That's quite a big undertaking. And also a really big responsibility, if you work with design, to do it right. 180,000, that's the amount of people working for IKEA right now. It's like a small city. Out of those, it is actually 20 that works as designers. That's the design team doing all of those things. So the way that we work is very different. But on top of that design team, of course, that core design team, there's product development teams, and there's 100 product development teams where the designers go in and out from. And also, we have external designers working for us. Those designers, that is actually the in-house design team, has worked approximately 15 years at IKEA. Because working as a designer at IKEA is not about just designing products. It's actually about designing systems. So sometimes when you start off doing like a new production of, or when you want to do something which is like storage, for instance, like a new wardrobe system, then you have to start off by designing the factory to be able to do the design of the product. That's the scale of things. $2,000 is the amount of news or projects that goes through this building every year that the 15 designers are overseeing. But here's the crazy thing. On top of the product designers, there's actually 1,000 interior designers out in all of the stores that is realizing the products into solutions. Because IKEA is not just about products, it's also about home furnishing solutions, how you put things together. And that's kind of the trick that made IKEA big, actually. So how to go about that then? When I got the task to come there, they wanted me to revitalize IKEA and also to strengthen the positioning within the design world. And how do you do that then? First of all, I think it's important to say that when you work with design, it shouldn't be about surface, it shouldn't be about things. It's always about making things better. And that goes very well together with actually the vision of IKEA, which is all about making things better in people's everyday life. So this is the focus, the starting focus. To be able to do that, one of the things that I saw was needed was actually to get people together within the company and to focus on design together. So it's not just a task for the design department. How do you do that then? Set up a language that incorporates all of the company at the same time, from different angles when you talk about design. Because if you could talk about design, in the same way, if you're an engineer, or if you're a designer, or if you're a salesperson, that strengthens it. Then it's not about good or bad. It's not about, does it look right or not. It's actually more like a common language. We call that democratic design at IKEA. Part of it, the democratic part, is to incorporate as much people as possible. The other part is actually the design tool, how we make things. And just taking you through one product here. This is one of the first things that we did through this method, actually, and that was the 365 Plus series, which is like the basics for the home. This is a water vessel. Looks like almost nothing to you, huh? It's a very simple design, but it's super hard to get there. So if you talk about the form factor of this one, why does it look like it looks like? We actually tested a lot of the different water vessels out on the market. One of the things we saw was that everybody was going for that cluck, cluck, cluck sound when you're pouring the water, because that's something that people like. It has its drawbacks, that thing. One of the things is that it's hard to clean. And we wanted it to be able to clean this actually inside of your dishwasher. So that's why we did the angle of this up here. The neck is far bigger. So you could put it upside down. So form follows function. We like that in Scandinavia and even in the Baltics, don't we? So that's part actually of the form and function. The other part, the sizing of it, coming to function then, which is the second part of democratic design, is we wanted it to be easy to live with, and we wanted it also to function for most people. So where do you actually have one of those things? Where do you store it? Yeah, you store it in your fridge. Most people store it in their fridge door when we did our research. So what about the sizes of fridge doors around the world? That was actually giving the diameter of this and the height. Us researching all of the fridge doors around the world. So this is the median for working there. Quality-wise, which is the third part of democratic design, it is actually about choices of materials. We could have done this in plastics, of course, but we were shying away from that because we thought it was not a good idea for having plastics together with food in the long run and water. So we were going for old school materials. And actually seeing to that the quality is not just about actually the use of it, but it's also the perception of the product. So the glass and the cork is the choice for giving this. And also, the cork as a stopper is something which is supernatural for people. Everybody knows that it's a stopper for wine since years and years and years. So could we use that to this? And also, from an IKEA perspective, this was smart. You know, IKEA liked low prices. And cork at the time, when we started out with this, there was too much cork in the world because everybody in the wine industry were going for screw corks, and they were going actually for plastic corks instead. And if you don't harvest the cork every 6 years, those trees will die. That gives, you know, IKEA an opportunity to go in there and use the cork for other purposes, which is for this stopper, for instance. And it's also good, cork and our dear glass, because both of them are completely recyclable. You could grind down cork and put it together again over and over again. So all of it is 100% recyclable. So this is part of the circular economy, which IKEA actually has promised to change all of its production until 2030 to being completely circular, which is a big thing. Last but not least then, if you have form, function, quality, and sustainability in each product that you do, then you want to make all of those great things available to people. And one of the things that we learned through the years within IKEA is actually that the major threshold for people to buy great design is something we call the low price. And there is a big difference between cheap and low price. We don't have that difference in the wordings in Swedish, but in English, you know it. We never want to be cheap. We want to be low price. And low price is all about accessibility. That's why you focus for it so much. So we actually start off all of the product development at IKEA from saying, this is the price that will make this great product meet the majority of people. So it's a reverse model for product development. So if that's the first thing, having a tool and a language that you share together, what is the second thing then? To change IKEA. It was all about actually making IKEA more creative. And how do you go about that? Everybody's talking about it. I guess you guys also, you're in the startup business. You want to be creative all the time, don't you? But creativity follows something. It follows curiosity. First of all, you have to be curious. And one of the things that we set out to do is to be far more curious on people, how they live, why they do stuff, coming closer. And actually, a thing that's been together with IKEA from the very beginning is doing home visits. We don't just rely on big research companies. We do our research ourselves, firsthand going home to people. Second step, which I'm going to show you now, is actually making people do their own home visits, presenting their homes, sending it to IKEA on movies. So here's a couple of guys and girls doing this.
My name is Sverre.
I am Andrea.
My name is Jolly.
My name is Paula. I'm from Brazil.
I'm from Istanbul, Turkey.
Welcome to New York City.
I'm Noah Maxwell.
My name is Mohit, and I'm here to show you my crib.
Great lip
All right,
sync.
round two. This is my room. That's my bed. It's pretty practical because you can stuff things underneath it.
I'm spending a lot of time at home writing and reading. We have so many books.
Most of the books here, they are choked up. So I need a bigger one so that it can contain more books.
My favorite chair, where I spend 10 hours a day.
Microwave oven, important.
This is a very well-designed bed and couch. And the same issue over there, bed and couch.
I have 2 beds, just in case someone is visiting me and I wanted to make them feel comfortable.
This is my room. This is my bed. This is where I study. This is my closet. And this is my mirror. And this is Freya. Hi, Freya. Hi.
This is where I'm squatting. No furniture. You can see my bed. It's on the floor. What I really mix? The dining table. One day I think I'll achieve it.
Postcards and pictures from my friends and family really makes me feel like I'm at home. For the last part, my favorite part of my room, which is my windowsill, where I can sit down and relax and read by the light of.
And now, the best part of my one-room nirvana is this. Recreational spot that I've created for me and my friends, where we just sit, talk, and share ideas, man. This is why I bought this one-room nirvana. Ciao.
I actually love this, the one-room nirvana. Everything that we did, from looking into people's homes, we share also now. So totally transparency was one of the tricks as well. So if you want to see things that has been researched by IKEA, you could go to this website, lifeathome.ikea.com, and find the latest research about life at home. What did we find then? What was actually problematic? What is the thing to change? It's pretty simple. People are talking about that we saw a decrease in the interest of the home coming up for IKEA. And the problem was actually that people don't connect a better life today. So how do you make a better life? It's not through making a better home, like it used to be in the 60s and 70s. That was so important. Now it's other things in life that makes a better life. So IKEA has to relate to that in a far bigger scale and work in a different way and maybe come home to people where they are outside of their homes as well, because that's important to them. So to do that then, we actually set out to try out, be curious about where we could meet people in different ways. And we had a task. We had a task to introduce this one. I don't know if you heard about it, but it's also part of the IKEA introduction of more vegetarian food into IKEA, because it makes sense for sustainability reasons, but it's also something which is a greater demand. This is the veggie dog. So when we wanted to introduce the veggie dog, instead of going for marketing, we actually went for coming out to people and doing an event for people. So what we did was to go to a festival in Boston and in Denmark as well. And we introduced this and tried it out and collab with people and see if this is actually working or not. And got a lot of feedback and also a lot of attention from doing that. Actually, instead of doing old school marketing for doing this, just by being curious upon people, we reached more than 1.5 billion impressions by being on 2 festivals. That's kind of cool. Now, I don't see that we have so much time about this, so I think I'm going to skip this one. The other part is, of course, to be curious upon how you could reinvent production, how you could reinvent what you're doing. One of the small things that we were looking upon was actually mass-produced uniqueness. The very thing that you love about IKEA is also the thing that you hate about IKEA. If you buy something there, you know that you're going to be one of thousands of people having the same thing. So could we do something about this? Could we tweak this into something new? This is actually something we did together with the Pita and Ake. Surface treatments, which are completely new on each and every product. We did porcelain. Everything coming out of the factory was differing from each other, like handmade, because the molds were differing. Same thing with stoneware. Actually, instead of working with someone who's doing perfectly finished stoneware molds in CNC mills and stuff like that, we worked with craftsmen. We were half good, and a lot of different craftsmen doing those molds. So everything coming out was very, very different from each other. The other part, which has also been introduced, but I think it's interesting for you guys to see, is something we call open source. We were curious about open source. What could IKEA do that could be open source? And it was actually about tweaking how sofas are made in a completely different way. Because sofas has been made in the same way years and years before, and this was a collaboration together with Tom Dixon. We saw that maybe instead of, the biggest thing that has changed in the sofa industry during the last 200 years is actually going from a hammer to a staple gun. Still the same construction. Could we take this into the industry where they make cars instead? So we made a sofa built from out of aluminum construction, and also, since you have it in aluminum construction, as you can see here, you could put in a lot of different grooves into that. So we made the first hackable sofa. And we called it delaktig, which is about sharing in Swedish. So anybody could take this on and actually make it into different things. So this is parts of the different stuff that we did. We did it together with other partners outside of IKEA, so they could hack it. Dixon actually had parts of it in his range that he did on top of the basics of IKEA. So it's a platform for other people's creativity. And I think that's something which is really interesting to have a look upon as a designer as well. So maybe it's not just about designing things, maybe it's also about designing tools for other people's creativity. And this is the thing that we would never bring into IKEA. It's kind of crazy. It's the Yeti model. That's the thing that actually our dear friend Tom Dixon sold when we're doing it. Okay, we did fashion. You've seen this. Why? Because fashion are really good on storytelling. So how could we bring storytelling into the company? We were curious about that. We were, of course, curious upon technology, as all of you. We started out with doing light units, which actually had charging units inside of them. So how could we make our pieces of furniture smarter? We did the smart lighting systems. We did the app, the augmented reality app. We did the party systems, also the connected party systems with our friends on Teenage Engineering. And after this, actually, there is coming Sonos. We were curious about senses. You know, what does the home smell like? What could we do about that? There's coming up an upcoming collaboration together with Byredo, which are perfumers from Sweden. We were taking on tasks in a different way. How could you do that? Yeah, small space has always been super important for IKEA. But to be able to do small space, let's bring that problem into space, because nowhere else is it more important to work with small spaces in a good way. So we sent our team to NASA and to Utah in the desert to live there, actually as a starting point. So going to extreme and being curious about going to extremes is one way of developing design. So that's what I've been doing within IKEA. We changed it through curiosity. We changed it through actually having a common language. And we changed it through getting all of the people together on the same task at the same time, being a design-driven company again. Now, we're soon going to have Indrek here aboard also speaking to you, but I just wanted to share super fast also what I'm doing right now, because I think it's some things there within Skewed. Skewed Productions, what we do is taking all of those learnings that I had, actually, which is all about being more transparent in your process when you work with design. We say that let's share what we do and share what we do and do what we share. To have a process which incorporates both design and communication at the same time. So you don't rely on marketing anymore. To actually ramp up the ideas at the same time as you're ramping up the interest through communication. That's the very idea of Skewed, and that is what we work with a lot of different companies. Having a model for that and applying that model, everything from having a common starting point, claiming the idea, share the process of the design so everybody's collaborating, is more interested, and then meet the people and the prototypes, launch, and sales start. That gives you so many opportunities to actually build up and ramp up the interest for what you're doing. And I think this is super interesting in the startup industry as well. So, one of the things there, we work with people with functional hinders. There's 1 billion of them in the world right now, actually, in a company called Unique, where I'm VP of design as well. We do covers for prosthetics. And now we're also taking on, through biometrics, how to work with braces. And the tool, which I'm thinking is super interesting, and I guess a lot of you are into it, is how do we capture data? How do we become smarter? So using biometrics, photometrics, turning that into generative design, and then into 3D production. That's a lean, super short value chain. And I think that's going to be applied in a lot of other design disciplines for the future. And that's what I'm working on. And we're turning from prosthetics, from medical wearables, actually into the next step with this company, and that is taking on gamers. So there's 2.2 billion gamers in the world. They actually sit and game for 14 billion hours every week. That's quite a lot. And they sit in a crappy way. They don't have any ergonomical solution whatsoever. So this is the thing that we're taking on. So this is my first time here in this city. Next week will be the third time in my life that I'm coming back to Tallinn. And there we're going to do the other part of Skewed Production and being part of the Simple Session 19 and actually introducing also our clothing lines done in the right way, which is, of course, clothes which are produced in a totally sustainable way from out of organic cotton in areas where you could use windmills and solar power only, and where people get paid in a great way, and where we focus on also female skaters. So I hope to see you in Tallinn next week, actually, or weekend, to watch the skate scene being revolutionized. So thank you. Talk is cheap, work is hard. Let's work.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Now we are going to continue on the stage. Indrek Kasela from United Angels will be on, and you're going to have a little chat for a while, talk about some of the topics, the many interesting topics that we just went over. Indrek and Marcus, take it away.
Hi. It's a mic on, actually, yeah. Actually, very good to sit down with you finally. We've been, last 24 hours has been, which I think is a typical probably day in your life. We've been crisscrossing Estonia, going to Saaremaa, Tallinn, spent a night in a straw house and smoked sauna. So good to see you in Estonia. And as I said, like Marcus will be back next week, so take a chance of that. Let's talk a little bit about IKEA, although I much prefer to talk about Skewed, actually. But while we were sort of, going crazy trying to cover Estonia in a day, the stats that IKEA has is actually pretty impressive. So you have 700 million sort of members. You serve 600 million meals a year. You have 2.8 billion sort of web page impressions. So why didn't you become like the Facebook or the platform for interior design? And I mean, you're only half smaller than Facebook when it comes to how many loyal fans you have.
I think that actually IKEA has been so focused on making solutions. They haven't been so focused upon talking about themselves, actually, but more about serving people and serving people's needs. So it's more that lately that things have come together. So how do you actually design and how do you communicate at the same time, so that could help you to get great ideas out? Because one of the problems when you do so many things is actually that it's easy that things get lost in this flow of stuff as well. And there I think communication would be a great tool.
Okay. And obviously, we are in this very big city of Tartu compared to Almhult, but I think what would interest people here is actually what are the benefits and how do you actually run such a global business out of a village of 10,000 people, and how does it actually in everyday life work? It's good to see that 10,000 to hundreds of millions of homes, but what's the everyday life like?
Everyday life is like lots of meetings, of course, because it's built upon that, like most businesses. But I think the most important part, if you want to run a global business from out of a small place like this, or like Älmhult, which is even smaller, you need to focus on your brand, to make your brand attractive. So actually, you could attract the greatest talent to where you are. And that could be both virtually, but mainly physically, actually. So from this small village in Älmhult, there is more than 4,000 people working for IKEA. 2,000 is commuting in and out every day, just to be able to work for IKEA, because they would like to do that. So that's kind of interesting. If IKEA wouldn't have been that interesting as a company, we would have had super big problems with talent. But that's not the case.
But so what are the functions you actually keep then in Almhult then?
The functions there actually now they're even more putting into the core. So this is like the core of IKEA. So you have everything about product development there, and also most of the purchasing and innovation is in the same space actually. And what's good is also that you have that in the same building. So this cross-pollinating between people is super important.
Okay. Many of you probably know, but so IKEA is present now in Estonia finally, and I think one area where IKEA actually was second best was actually when it came to urban farming. So recently IKEA made a pretty significant, I think actually one of the very first investment actually in the startups, like in a click and grow, which hopefully will find the ways now into like hundreds of millions of homes. But how common is that actually you guys actually invest in startups? And
that's a thing that has happened lately, I would say. The first one was actually IKEA, and that was the retail part of IKEA acquiring TaskRabbit for helping out for all of the services around the IKEA stores. And this is, I think, the second one. But then there is a group within IKEA that also, it's not like IKEA, it's called, it's the owner part, where they invest a lot in green technology and so on as well. So startups there.
Yeah, but again, what I find very, very fascinating, what brought us in a little bit together is the food, which is very much of the part of the DNA. Not only 600 million meals, that makes you what pretty big compared to even to McDonald's. So,
yeah, but it's at least on top 5 in terms of restaurant chains around the world.
What's the idea about this food in a sense, like combining that? Was that because you?
That was actually the idea of that came from the founder from the very beginning. Hey, this is like an old idea, and he saw that being in an IKEA store, it takes a long time, up to a couple of hours, and then you want to keep customers happy during that trip. So then he introduced a restaurant in the middle of that, and that was more or less just without getting any money from out of it, just selling it at cost. So the idea was to keep people happy from the beginning. Nowadays, we talk about it, they talk about it more from out of the perspective of, this is actually the part of the brand where you could experience from all of your senses. So how does IKEA taste? And the value of things is also easier to explain. If you do like our hot dog, for instance, nobody could beat IKEA on the price for a hot dog. That means that IKEA have really good prices because you have a price relation to food, rather than to maybe pieces of furniture. So it's important for the brand.
And what, of course, I have to ask you, the cliche trend being in food business. So what are the are you like? I mean, how does the selection actually made? Like, what do you think you need to push as a new trend? And for example, in the food, like we talked about the homes, like connectivity, etc. But you are, as I understand, you're number 3 in the world when it comes to food. So which.
Yeah, one of the biggest things there is actually going far more, I wouldn't say vegan, but vegetarian. So a bigger part of the range will be vegetarian. And then it's also about, what do you say, in terms of trends, I would say that you're going to see even more of the Scandinavian parts, where we talk about the new Scandinavian cuisine. That is actually happening within IKEA also, in a bigger scale.
But doesn't that make you sad if you see that you design like hundreds of millions of homes? So actually, can you raise hands? How many people here have IKEA pieces at home?
That's quite a lot.
That's like I would say close to 100%. So that's even without having an IKEA store in Estonia. But when we talk about like the future of life in the cities, is that doesn't that make you a bit sad when you see that you design beautiful homes, you have like sustainably sourced food there, everything works, but as soon as you step outside and look at the architecture of the building, that is in mass-produced ways gone ugly. So why do you think that has not happened like in a construction? Why hasn't IKEA, for example, being such a platform, been able to actually make our cities look more beautiful and functional and form, as you said?
Yeah, but I think that it might be the next step, actually. But from time to time during my years, I actually started out at IKEA in the early 90s from the beginning. During those years, I've seen us going into this, looking into housing. It's super problematic to do something about it because there's so many hinders, which is country by country, to solve this, to disrupt it. But it's a business which needs disruption.
But don't you have the same issues with the furniture, with like the safety requirements, etc.?
Yeah, it's becoming harder and harder actually, because there is so many safety requirements. But here it's more like technological things also, that plumbing systems are completely different between different countries, for instance. So that it's hard to drive volume, which is the IKEA way of solving pricing. So those issues it is actually.
But do you see anything on your radar that can actually change that? Any of the companies in the world that...
I actually think that there is some interesting companies coming up there. You have in the United States, there's a startup called Kitara, which is also one of the most well-founded startups lately. They got like $800 million from SoftBank lately. So, and they're doing this. They're trying to reinvent the business of building, and I think that's a good sign.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good way to eradicate a little bit of inequality in the world. So actually, because as I said as well, you have to get the space to predict how small the living space is going to become in the future here. But since we are very very celebrity obsessed, and but I actually want to give you more time to talk about Skewed as well. So, you actually started collaborating with Kanye West as well. Why Kanye?
We did actually not collaborate with Kanye West, but he visited me in Älmhult once. He was super curious about how IKEA made things, and he wanted to do something together, but that never happened. What happened from out of that meeting was that we started out to work together with Virgil Abloh, who happens to be the creative director from Kanye at the time.
And so so you decided to leave IKEA just recently, and it was obviously made big headlines around the world. I understand, your founder passed away some time ago as well. So, and then I presume the DNA of the company a little bit sort of changed. So, what is it that you can do at Skewed you couldn't do at the company that has 700 million sort of fans and counting in the world? So,
I guess there's nothing actually, but one of the things, this is the second time around that I leave IKEA, actually. I did that year 2000 as well. And this is for the same reason, because it's something that I want to change. I came back to IKEA because they gave me the opportunity to change stuff within IKEA, to change it to be even more design-driven. And why I leave it is because I believe that there is a big shift happening now and needs to happen also, which is actually turning marketing money into design money instead. Because I think that would cater for better solutions for the world. Because marketing as such, as it works right now, doesn't work anymore. So it's more like pouring out money. But what about getting that money into actually better product development? That is something that communicates. So this is my mission that I'm on. Last time when I left IKEA, it was the mission to change retailing to the better. And I worked for 12 years doing that for a lot of big companies. So this time around, I want to change this.
That sounds like a manna from heaven for all the the engineers who've been suffering at the hands of so the marketing people in the late. So how realistic do you think that is going to happen? Because I think when people ask about why Estonia is so successful, and then Taavi Kotka actually he always says that because this country was built by engineers, not by the politicians. So do you see that as something that needs a global revolution in a sense, and are we being inundated too much of as I say, the age of stupidity and Instagram glorifications, and it seems to be very hard to actually get your good design through all the noise, all the marketing noise. I mean, I actually do recommend, if you haven't watched the latest Fire Festival documentary on Netflix, which features the only sensible person that was actually Estonian.
Yeah.
So,
that's a really good one.
But that's a very hard one. So how do you actually do that, just without saying?
But you need to make friends in different disciplines. And working for IKEA, you work in one discipline, which is all about the home. And now I'm actually starting off working, as you can see, with medical wearables, into gaming, and also sports, and into food. And to get those friends to work in this way, and also to believe in this mission, which is actually that great design could change things and could also communicate the brand even better than something which is told afterwards by a marketeer.
Fantastic. So I hope your new venture becomes as big as what you've done with IKEA. So, as Marcus said, that the Q&A will be continued for 3 days in a row at Simple Session at Saku Suurhall next weekend. So show up and the man will be there.
Yeah, and bring your board.
And bring your board as well. So thank you so much.